to another episode of the Tell Not Show. As always, we are your guests. This is Kirsha Fox, who is the author of the newly released Son of Deception, Homeschooling Mama 4, and Gamer.
Thank you. My co-host is Julia J.K. Allen, editor, author, and author coach. She wouldn't trade her job for anything in the world because she gets to read for work.
Yes, it is fabulous. All right, we're so excited to welcome our guest tonight, Anorin Arssinous. Thank you so much for being on, and Kirsha will tell you a little bit about Anorin.
Yes, Anorin is always the quiet, nerdy girl, reading books and getting lost in worlds full of magic, impossibility, and true love. When she doesn't have her nose stuck in between the pages of a story, Anorin would dream up her own. With a background in psychology, criminology, and linguistics, she brings a unique perspective to flawed, complex, and relatable characters. Adoring the darker side of storytelling, of things that hide just below the shadows inside your mind, Anorin is not afraid to explore what awaits at the edge of reality and sanity. But above all else, you can always expect these tales to have one element: love. When she isn't writing, Anorin reads everything from fantasy to forensics, enjoys drawing and the crafts, including the ones that require a spell or two, and lives to ignore do not enter signs, particularly those in cemetery gates. And if you can't find her in a library, Comic-Con, a forest, or a coffee shop, check the floor. She tends to perform random gravity checks. We're so glad to have you on today.
I absolutely adore your bio.
Sorry, I didn't realize you guys were going to read the whole thing. I'm so sorry.
No,
I would have given you a truncated version.
This is the best.
I love your bio. I was just going to say that. It's so magical and really like captures like a great personality and essence in like what it says. And I also randomly end up on the floor.
Yeah. This is so verb for you. This is amazing. Like we're like,
hardcore relate.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I know when I used to work in retail, like we'd have all of the like clothing on tables and like pulled out things. And sometimes we would just be crooked and it'd be like, oh, that's where Julia walked by. And the clumsy girl in me like sees the clumsy girl in you. So really, really loved your bio.
Thank you.
But yeah, no, it's a great way of getting to know you. We always read people's bios because like when you're put on the spot and they're like, oh, tell us about you and like what you write, people tend to freeze and like be like, well, I write fantasy. And so like having a bio is a really nice way to get to know someone quickly. So tell us a little bit about your writing journey. Like what got you started as a writer and how long have you been writing?
Where to start? So I suffer from insomnia. So ever since I was like 10, 11, I couldn't really sleep very well. So like to help myself fall asleep, I would tell myself stories. And it was the corniest, cheesiest Lifetime movie stories, right? Boy meets girl, they fall in love, kind of stuff, right? But it would help me fall asleep. But the more I did it, the longer I would end up staying up. And I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't working. So I ended up writing it out. I was like, this is counterproductive. So then I started to write them out and I'm like, wait a minute, this is actually kind of cool and fun. And I'm kind of good at it. Well, back then, my 12-year-old self, right? It kind of came naturally. And then that, in time I kept going until I hit high school and we had like writing projects here and there. And my teachers encouraged me to continue to write. I think the earliest story I wrote was in grammar school. It was like a Cinderella retelling. My grammar school teacher said, oh, you should keep doing this. And I was like 7 or 8. I'm like, okay.
Right.
But, impressionable little Anorin. Until I ended up, my professional writing career wasn't up until, I think, 2020, where the pandemic hit. And I was working at a hospital and my hours were getting cut. And I was like, oh no, what if they get cut too much and I'm out of a job? So I'm like, I think this is the best time for me to put my dream out there. And I was like, okay, fuck it, let's do it. So I started my LLC. I started doing a whole bunch of research about like the difference between traditional publishing and self-publishing,
Mm-hmm.
and went from there. And the biggest deciding factor for self-pub and traditional pub was copyright. Um,
Right.
because with traditional publishing, you sell your story to the publishing house, but
Mhm.
with self-publishing, you keep the rights to your own work, and that was the biggest deciding factor for me, because it's my story, it's my baby. I want to keep it. It's mine. Back off.
Yes.
So yeah.
I can definitely relate. I started out kind of more on the traditional publishing side, and I was just like, I want all the control. I want to control everything about my book and my deadlines and everything, the cover, merchandise. And so I was just like, self publishing is definitely the right step for me. So can totally relate to that. And
It was absolutely the same for me too. I'm like,
yeah,
I want to choose the cover. I want to have the final say on what goes into the story and what doesn't. So you write dark fantasy with horror and thriller undertones. What got you into that? Tell us more about
Emphasis
that.
on the dark. Um,
hmm
uh, well, inspiration comes a lot from music, but also uh, nightmares.
mm.
So you can thank my, trauma for that. But yeah, so my imaginary brain here likes to run nonstop. And with insomnia, you have like night terrors and things like that, which are horrible, but they're good writing fuel, oddly enough.
Mm-hmm.
So I took that and I ran with it. Um, and I ran with it to the point where I wrote a 600-page book. So, and people liked it. Um, yeah. So but I like darker themes because I feel like there's more emphasis on the lighter side of things, which is good. We need that because the world, let's be honest, is shit. It's just horrible out there. There's not a day that goes by that there isn't something tragic happening, and I hate that. So we
Mm,
do need the lighter writing, but I don't want us to forget how bad it actually is out there.
Right.
And I want people to be able to pick up a story, to go to a bookstore, a library, Kindle, whatever, and be like, I can relate to this, even though it's dark material, whether
mhm,
it's sexual assault, murder, anything, right? Um,
Mm.
any kind of trauma, and just to look at it and be like, whether it's happened to themselves or somebody they know, and be able to be like, yes, this is realistic, this is gritty, this is actually not sugar coated, this is real life, even though there's fantasy in it. And I can read it, I can relate to it to some extent, and I can, in a way, actually heal from it, heal through
Right.
it, and that's what I wanted to
absolutely.
do, because that's what my writing does for me. Also, it's a very therapeutic, cathartic
Mm,
process, and I
mm,
wanted my writing, even though it's darker, to help someone else the same way it helps me. Because I don't want to sugarcoat all the crap that's in the world. It's like front and center, here it is. But at the end of it, you can get out of it. You can survive. You can fight through it. And that's what my characters do. They survive, they fight their way through it. And despite all the bad things that happen, you can come out the other end.
That was a fabulous answer
yes.
because I really truly believe that representation of all kinds is so important, right? And that includes for the grittier stuff. So I really love that you pointed out that like sometimes we need to see the uglier side of stuff. As long as it's like really realistically done and very true to the event, because like we talk about this all the time, but fiction is a way of telling the truth through untruth, for sure.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mhm,
Especially representation too for mental health and mental illness. My characters have a slew of challenges they go through, and I try to represent that in as a realistic way as possible. Well, my character, how you kind of split, you have like a
Mm.
dissociation. My character does that, but she literally does that, so you take that, but you do it. She does it literally. Yeah. So she literally disassociates, like into her different selves, with hallucinations and stuff like that. And people appreciate that. My readers appreciate that, because I'm not doing it for like the shock and awe and like the glorification of like, oh, this is dark, this is mental illness, and I'm like romanticizing it in a sense. But this is what it actually is. Like, people actually go through it. I'm going through it. Like, I want people to have that outlet, because not many people do.
One of the reasons why we read is to walk in somebody else's shoes, like live their life, see what it is like to be them, so we can experience what that might be like, from someone who knows something about it. And I think that it really is good for like exposure and understanding, and seeing other perspectives. It gives you that empathy and compassion.
Yeah, 100%. I think so many times mental health in general is stigmatized, and the more we talk about it, the more we normalize it, the better for everyone it'll be, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so I did want to ask you about what your writing process looks like. So, like, plotter, pantser, in
Discovery
between.
writer, knitter.
Yeah.
All of the above. So, if I plan, like if I'm a planner, I'm sorry, if I'm a plotter, I'm already getting chaotic. I will go. I don't know if you're familiar with Monica Geller from Friends, but I will go Monica Geller. I'll have a binder. I will just go deep, and I will get lost, and I will never actually write the book because I will outline and just it'll be bad. A little bit obsessive, a little bit compulsive. So because I know that, I have to reel myself back and just plot a little bit. Like, I'll have the bare bones of like, okay, this is how Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3 are going to be. I kind of know the ending. I know the beginning. I know what's going to happen in the middle. Like, I know the beats, right?
Right.
I know the important events. I know what the secondary plots are. And then I just dive in and I pants it. And then I also, Kirsha, I do a lot of discovery writing, because things kind of come to me without me even planning them. For instance, one of my characters was never even supposed to exist, but she did. It was my main character, Debbie, sitting in the living room with another character, Mello, and the way the scene just kind of organically flowed, it ended up having another character come into being. And I was like, oh, who is he actually talking about in this way? Oh, wait, it's actually his wife. Oh, okay. He was never supposed to have a wife, because I didn't want it to have this like husband wife dynamic within these soldiers, but it ended up being that way. And I was like, well, if she's wanting to come out and be part of the group, I'm like, I'm not going to say no.
Right.
You're in my head there for a reason. So it's a lot of discovery writing. Music is a huge factor. The tone of the music, lyrical, instrumental. For instance, this one song is like controlling my brain at the moment. An entire chapter that was never going to happen has happened because of this song. It's called Blood Upon the Snow by Hosier and Bear McCreary, I think. So and now I've had to kind of rearrange a few things to add that chapter into it, because I have to have that chapter with that song playing as I write that chapter. So I think I answered your question. I don't even remember.
A very good explanation of your writing process. You need your music, you need your plot, but not too much, and you discover, and you tell your character stories as they're telling them to you.
Exactly. Yes.
Wonderful.
You answered it better than I did.
No.
Oh, no, not at all.
That's my hidden talent, is I hear other people and then I sum it up really well.
I can't sum anything up. That's why I had like a almost 300,000 word novel, and I was like, I need to
Yeah.
cut this, and I ended up cutting 100,000 words.
Oh wow, yeah.
So that's another, I guess, part of my writing process, going back and seeing what is actually crucial to the story and what is just poor exposition and descriptive stuff. And I was like, nope, nope,
Mhm.
nope, we don't need this, we don't need that, cut it all out. What is enhancing the plot, what is slowing down the plot. So yeah.
I always find that so interesting because I actually have the opposite problem. A lot of times when I write, I'm an underwriter. Like it'll be very dialogue heavy and not much description of what's going on while people are talking. And then I have to go through and like bulk it up and put in those descriptions and the setting and all of that stuff. So I find it really interesting hearing about everyone's different writing process because it's so different depending on who you talk to.
Mm-hmm. And I'm like you, where the manuscript gets so big that I'm forced to chop it up into smaller
Right.
installments and to cut it back a lot. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, I every time, like everyone's like, "How's your word count doing?" I'm like, "It got bigger, and it wasn't supposed to."
Yeah.
Right.
So,
You're in good company though, because I read On Writing by Stephen King, and he was like, when you're editing, you should cut 10% of your words because you don't need them. And I was like, if I did that, I'd have like a novella. But yeah, you're in good company for sure.
so what are some things that you've overcome as an author? So you've been doing this about 3 years now. So,
Um,
3
writing
years.
professionally, where I've been publishing, yeah, 3 years. But I've been writing my whole life. But professionally, things have been definitely difficult. Time management, because I was working full time as I was writing, so time management definitely has been insane to get over. Writing my editing and finishing writing Kairos, which is the first book, and then Memoria, which is the sequel. There was about a span of 5 days where I did not sleep. I slept maybe like 3 hours. I went to work, I came home, I was writing, editing, went to work, came home. It was, I don't even know how I survived that. My therapist was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, what?
Right.
I don't know, but we are fine. We're going. She's like, "Do I need to send you to the doctor?" I'm like, "No, this is an isolated incident. I'm editing. I'm gonna get through this, and then
Right.
we'll be back to normal."
Right.
But yeah, time management. When you work full time, it's so difficult because how do you do that? Because writing is also, because if you're writing professionally, writing in general, I say professionally, but it's not right. When you're a writer, you're an author. Even those words interchangeably, one has the connotation of like you're getting paid to write in a sense, and the other is like it's
Mhm.
just a hobby. It's if you're a writer, if you're writing a book, you're or a poem or anything, you're a writer is what I
Mhm.
think is. It's not any less or more just because you're getting paid for it. I think a lot
Mhm.
of new authors think that way, and I feel like it's so sad because they think it makes them less than, and I don't like
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
Especially when you come home, because once work ends, you come home, and I have my niece, and I help babysit her, so it's like
Mhm.
I'm not like a working mom, but I'm a working aunt. So I'm like helping,
Mhm.
take care of her. And then it's around 8 o'clock that I have time for myself. But then I have to be up at 4:30 in the morning to get ready for work. So then when do I go to
Yeah.
sleep and when do I write? And that's where the sleepless nights come in. Don't do
Mm.
that. Do not do that.
Right.
It's not healthy. It is not healthy. Um, but I've kind of overcome that because I would write at work. Don't do that either. But I would keep writing at work.
Right.
Either on my phone, I'd make little TikToks and get the writing out that way.
Mhm.
Or I would just write in a journal or notebook, or like on a piece of paper when my manager wasn't looking. I'll just get the words out
Right.
anywhere you can. Um, so, but find any window of opportunity is what I figured it out as. Even if it's like maybe for like half an hour before bed,
Mm.
um, do that. That's what I was doing, because I need sleep. I need to be able to, survive and function. Um, that's what I've overcome. I think that was the big, and imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Let me tell you, Memoria kicked my ass. That is the second book. I still don't think I personally think it's crap. My
Right.
readers with their tissue boxes in hand are telling me otherwise.
Right.
But I'm like, nope, it's crap. But at a certain point, you have to trust others, right? Because once you write the
Mhm.
story and it's out of you, it's for your readers now. And
Right.
they kind of have the final say because it's up to them how your work is, and
Right.
how it
How it's
relates to them.
perceived.
And if they say it's crap, or another person says it's not, I mean, who's to say? Everything is subjective.
Mm.
Um, but imposter syndrome is another thing. I'm still working on that though. But at some point, I was like, okay, it's done. It's over with. I'm good. And yeah, but I'm not good. I'm only a little good.
I was just talking about that with a friend tonight of how no one judges us more than we judge ourselves. And no one judges us worse than we judge ourselves. So completely understand the imposter
Yes.
syndrome.
I
Yeah.
had to be like, I'm an imposter, but I'm not going to stop. So
Right.
Yeah,
Keep
you have to
impostering
keep going.
through.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a writer.
exactly.
It's what I do. I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah, you just got to
Until
keep
I,
going.
yeah, not going to give up.
Yeah, I know. It is a struggle that I feel a lot of people do face when they, even when they're established writers and they have 5 or more books out. I hear people say like, "Oh, I still feel like an imposter," and it's something that we all continuously work on, but still, I think struggle with for
Yes.
a while.
On a
I know.
writing forum, sorry, on a
Mhm.
writing forum, I posed the question to the other authors of how many books did you write before you really felt like you knew what you were doing? And a
Right.
few of them were like numbers anywhere between 2 to 7, but more than half were like, I've put out so many books and I still don't have any idea like if
Right.
I'm good or not, or if I have figured this out. So
Right.
Yeah,
I think it just comes with the territory.
yeah.
I think so too. I feel like even just being adults, I still feel like, oh, find an adultier adult to handle the
Right, right.
situation.
But
You
that's like,
know,
wait,
like
I'm the adult now. Oh no, it's like it
right,
doesn't.
like don't rely on me. I'm winging it. But I
No,
feel like
exactly.
everyone kind of is in the same boat. I know when we talked to you before the show, we asked you what some of your strengths were, and you said imagery was a really a strength for you. And so I wanted to talk a little bit more about how this is your strength and some tips you have for others when it comes to writing imagery and descriptions.
Well, I have no idea how it's strength. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't break anything down for you, but what I was thinking about right before the show was kind of like show don't tell.
Hmm.
Oddly enough, which
Right.
is the title. Um, you, what I do is I look at everything as a moment, and I try to break that moment down and make it last as long as possible.
Mm.
So, and I tend to be very flowery and very metaphoric. So, for instance, right now I have like red string lights, right?
Hmm.
But each string light looks like burning embers. And I could say like uh, they're uh, a trail of burning embers crawling across the ceiling, right?
Right.
They're not crawling, of course, but the way they're positioned, because they're not in a straight line, it gives the reader an impression of like these things are moving.
Hmm.
So you want to be uh, a little whimsical and a little metaphorical to give the reader something that looks like a picture but in the words, something that'll bring movement with your words, that'll kind of spark something in their mind's eye. You never want them to be like, oh yeah, there were red string lights in my on my ceiling, because that's just telling them, right?
Mm.
Unless the next sentence after that is they were burning uh, across the wood, like wildfire or something like that to intensify the previous sentence.
Right.
um, I have no idea. I'm just winging it at the moment.
Go for it.
But you want to emphasize where you need to and de-emphasize where you don't. Like,
Right.
in other words, show don't tell when you want to, right? So I really don't know how I do it, and I'm not saying that as a oh, I don't know how I do it kind of thing. It's it's honestly, it's one of those things where it comes organically to you, and you can't, like, you can't find where it starts and where it ends. Like, I don't really know.
Right.
So the best way I can describe it is I use a lot of flowery metaphoric language.
Hmm.
Um, and you couldn't tell the way I'm talking to you right now that I do, in fact, write novels. But, and I have background in linguistics, but I promise you, um, I do know words,
No,
and
I
I make them pretty.
I think you were like, I can't describe it, and then you described it perfectly for someone. So
You
I
really
think
did.
you are doing great.
Oh, goodness.
I really see like kind of, and I think this probably comes from your linguistics background, but kind of like a wonder at language in the example of the descriptions you gave us for good descriptive writing, because I feel like people who study language at its core really understand like the magic that language is, that we make these random noises with our mouths and are able to convey concepts like love or despair, or like these our inner worlds with other people and have them experience and feel the same as we are, and it's just
Yeah.
such a magical process, and I feel like that magic is probably what makes your description so great.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because you want to, everything has to connect back to the character and the scene and whatever the situation is happening at that moment, and then you want to propel that to the reader, right? It has to come off the
Mhm.
page. And how do you do that? The main thing is you have to first build the foundation of having the reader connect to your characters first, putting them in their shoes, making sure that they're able to feel what they're feeling. And then from there, once you have that foundation built, then everything else that you layer on is going to pull the reader in more and more.
Mm-hmm.
So if one of my characters is laying down in a empty abandoned warehouse on a brick ground or a concrete ground with her bloodied up leather jacket staring out of a window with rain dripping everywhere, and before that, of course, they already know that she's disconnected to everything, and that all of a sudden that pane of glass is a separation of not just her with the world, but her with everything that can touch her. The rain obviously
Right.
cannot touch her at this point, so it just adds that extra set of separation. She's in this empty warehouse. There's blood on her jacket. The jacket isn't even on her. It's used as a pillow. Pane
Mm-hmm.
of glass that's clear, she can see the outside, but she's not part of the outside world. So all of these layers are built in so that when you get to that point where she's looking out the window and she's describing the rain, it's not just the rain that she's describing. You have all these other things that have been compacted into that moment. And I am uh, talking too much now. Sorry. No one.
No, no.
No, you're painting. You're painting
Yeah,
with words.
sorry.
It,
And I don't know when to stop talking. I'm so sorry. This is why I write 300,000 words and I don't know when to stop.
No, you're
Ah,
doing fabulous. I'm like fascinated by everything you're
yes,
saying.
because
So
you're
yeah.
describing it, and we can so perfectly see it in our mind's eye. We can see that girl. We can see her staring at the rain. We can see this
Mm-hmm.
abandoned warehouse and the bloody jacket. Like you did such a
Right.
good job of painting just such a clear picture in that moment, and we're just like, wow, tell us what happens next.
Yeah, yeah.
You really drew us
It's
in there.
like an inception type of description where, like you were saying, the metaphor is
Hmm.
within the description, and so you've got like description within description that's like all working towards the same goal, which is like showing how isolated and whatever defeated she may be in that moment. And yeah,
Hmm.
I think that's fabulous to talk other writers through your process of how you do it, because like learning by example is such a great way of learning.
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
yeah, so
thank you.
I'm loving everything you're saying.
Thank you.
What do you feel are some of the pitfalls that other writers might make when they're trying to do imagery?
um, oh gosh, probably some of the things that I've done myself is, and some things I've seen in some books is being too descriptive.
Mm,
And let me tell you what I mean by that. The two ends of the spectrum, not being descriptive enough by telling, and then being too descriptive by giving so much information that you don't give the reader enough room to get into the story. So like lots of exposition, right? Lots of descriptions of like, I think the popular thing is like J.R. Tolkien spending 3 pages talking about a tree. I think is the
Yes.
Right.
running joke, right?
Yes, that's
Um,
true.
and I had done that. I think when I was editing Kairos, I think I'd spent like 2 paragraphs talking about a bathroom. The plan was that everything that Devi, who's my character, was describing in the bathroom was going to come back later and have some sort of relevance.
Hmm.
It didn't. So I was just like, oh, okay, because everything was like handmade, everything had taken time to create. Um, but then after a while, I was like, what the fuck am I doing? 2 fucking paragraphs full of a blue bathroom tile. I'm like, no, no.
Right.
So that when you describe too much, when you take too much time um, building this image for the reader to read, you've just spent now like this much space on the page on
Mhm.
one thing that they're going to get bored. They're going to get bored. Um, unless there's a lot of emotion invoked behind this imagery, you don't want this much space for the reader because all they're just going to skim right past it and get back to the dialogue or to the next scene break to get to the story.
Right.
And I've seen that. I've done that myself. I kind of like skim through. I'm like, I don't need to know how many chains on your necklace unless it's relevant to something, right?
Right.
And the way you're going to know it's relevant is by context clues in the sentence or paragraph before,
Right.
the chapter's title, certain little clues in the chapter. Um, so I would recommend that, like, don't, if you're going to describe something, just remember how much real estate you have on each page.
Right.
And if you are describing something, if it is relevant to the story to have like this, take up the whole page of imagery, have fun with it and make it impactful. If you're going to write a
Mm.
page about a bathroom, make sure there are things happening in that bathroom that are going to keep the reader, in there. For me, for instance, it wasn't a page, but there was a witch behind a mirror, and she was trying to kill my character. So,
Right.
um,
Right.
but but yeah, so stuff like that. I hope I answered your question.
Yes.
My mind kind of goes, and I can
Witch
never.
behind the mirror definitely adds some tension to that
Yeah,
scene.
for sure.
Yeah.
And I know everyone knows Chekhov's gun. Like if you have
Oh
a
yes.
gun, if you
Oh,
describe a gun, it's got
I
to
love
pay
it.
off in the end. But people often don't think about the opposite, which is what you're describing. Is that if you describe something and it doesn't have a payoff, like you are doing a disservice to your reader because they're like, "Why tell me about the block of knives on the kitchen counter if they don't come into play?"
Exactly.
And so there is such a thing as like over describing insignificant objects or things in our story. And so yeah, I love that advice too. Um, so you said previously that you make a lot of your readers cry. Obviously, you're working with like gritty stuff, but how do you achieve this for other
I'm
authors
sorry.
to
I'm
know?
laughing, y'all. I have no idea because no, honestly, because my my emphasis and like my my sense of achievement is like I've written something dark and a little horrifying, and this is kind of creepy because there's like demons and these ghosts and like there's like dark shit and like there's all this like murder and like violence, and then wait, you're crying? Why? What? You're not scared? I've broken your heart? Really? You're throwing your book across the room because like you're supposed to be scared of this. And it's the complete opposite of what I was going for, but I have somehow managed
Mm-hmm.
to break hearts, which was not my intention. It was my second intention. I will be honest with that. But my first intention was to scare people because the
Right.
Debbie she goes through it. There's like psychological and physical torture. She sees dead people. Um, there at one point there is something and there's a man in the mirror that tries to come out of the mirror, and no one else sees it, or actually they pretend they don't see it. It's a whole mind
Mm.
game thing. Um, it's just this creepy stuff. Like at another point, there's a demon that is chilling outside of her window, and she's just like, tapping across the window, and Debbie tries to ignore it, but like it's just this like random tapping, right? It's just she sees the silhouette, and she's like, I know you're out there, but I'm not gonna talk to you. But it's just like knowing that there's a presence other than yourself in the same space as you. And they fly right past this stuff, right? And they go to the love, the broken, tragic, ill-fated, star-crossed,
Right.
which is probably accounts for like maybe 30% of the book or 20% of the book. So how do I do that?
It sounds like you really pull your readers into that character to the point where they are absolutely feeling what she's going through. And
yeah, so I think that's the one way I'm doing it. Like I put them front and center to what Debbie goes through, because she breaks the fourth wall a lot of the time also, which is she does that a lot for several reasons, which I don't want to say now because there's a whole thing about it for the series, but she breaks the fourth wall a lot. She talks to the reader a lot, which is another strategy of like getting the reader into the book or into the character. But Debbie and Vincent, who's the main character, they have this strange connection. Like they can feel what one another feels. They can talk to each other via, their mind. And he goes through a lot to try and protect her. And he sacrifices a lot, and he goes through a lot to help her. And they always end up hurt physically, emotionally, and it seems like no matter what they do, it never quite works out for them. And he ends up sacrificing himself the most to end up helping her. And he ends up dying. And you find that on the page 1. It's in the blurb. Like
good.
He's dead.
No spoilers. Yeah.
No spoiler there. And yeah, so the whole book, she's like, it's my fault. He's dead. And like, it's this whole thing. But then the middle of the book, you go into these flashbacks. The middle of the book. So the beginning of the book is near the end, and then the middle of the book is actually the beginning, and then the end of the book is the proper end in the timeline. So the middle of the book, the readers are actually seeing Debbie's origin, how she became what she became, how she meets these other soldiers, how she meets Vincent. So you actually see him alive and what he does for her and what he goes through himself, and how their love comes to be, because it's not a love at first sight kind of thing, but there is something here right away. Like something is here, and there's more to this story than you are telling me, kind of thing. And then you see them get closer and closer, and then you see them getting torn apart repeatedly.
Right.
I don't think I answered your question though.
I think it's a testament to how much your readers love the characters, though, that they are crying over their story. Like, I think it's just I think that's the second half of it for sure.
You're making your characters relatable and gritty, and bringing in a lot of emotion, and putting the reader in their head, in their experience. Yeah,
I think so. I think the best way would just have to be like, you'd have to read it to know. And I'm not saying go read my book, but like if you read anything, or like if you watch any show that you're emotionally connected to, like you said, if you're emotionally invested in a character, you'll definitely know. And the best way to be emotionally invested in a character is to give them something worth losing. I think is what it comes down to. And I guess that's what I do. I don't
love that
know how I do it though.
Give them
and
something
I'm so
worth
sorry.
losing. So poignant. Yeah.
And plot twists, of course.
Yes. I adore plot twists. I try to put as many as I can into my own writing because they're just so much fun.
Right.
When people are reading, I'm like, what chapter are you on? Because I know that they're almost there. And
Right.
then I get the angry text messages of, what did you do? And I'm like, yes, yes, they got there.
They got to that part. Right.
My readers, she'll text me. She's like, I can't keep reading this. I'm like, why? What's up? She's like, I am dreaming about this right now. I can't. I'm done. I have to put this away. I'm like, I'm sorry.
I love
Yeah,
that though.
yeah,
Yeah, that's amazing.
yeah. It's fun. It's really fun.
So that's one of my favorite parts of writing is that kind of feedback of people just loving it and also their anger. But what is your favorite part of writing?
Oh gosh, I was looking at this question and I'm like, what is my favorite part of writing? Um, and it's writing, just actually just writing because it's an outlet. It's where my imagination comes to life. Just the process of everything. The whole method of writing. Um, Getting into that mode and into that world where I'm no longer myself, but I'm all these people and I'm all these places and I'm able to do all these things in a way, vicariously through my characters. Um, and I'm just there. I'm there with them, right? I love that about writing because for those short few hours or however long I'm writing for, I'm I am my story, and I
Mm-hmm.
love that because it's no longer in my head at that point. It's like it comes from your soul, and it's like you were saying, Julie, too. It's that magic, and it's
Mm.
comes from me and to my lovely keyboard, which is not very magical, but
Right.
um, it's just that literal process of writing, and then at the end of that, you give it to a reader, and that's the biggest payoff for me because they
Mm.
get to enjoy everything, the good and the bad. So yeah.
Yeah. It's like a whole, like you said, you're creating these whole worlds and characters, and then you get to get the joy of other people enjoying that too.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. So now I got to ask the other side of that. What is your least favorite part of writing?
Writing.
I love that answer. Yeah.
Writing, because you actually have to sit down and get the words out, right? And
Right.
sometimes you just can't. If there's that writer's block, um, sometimes you just sit there and you're like, what the fuck am I doing? You can have all the motivation, you can have the music, you have the tea, you have a candle lit, um, lights low, and you're like, okay, I got this. I'm gonna do this. I have the song in my head. I know the scene I want to write. Let's go. Why aren't you going?
Right. Right.
So you're like, God damn it. Like, yeah, I haven't written for 2 weeks. Like I cannot write. Um, except for like these little things that I'm putting on TikTok. Like I know those scenes in my head, like the chapters. So I know they're like little puzzle pieces, right? So the part I don't like about writing is writing because how do I get those puzzle pieces to complete the whole picture, right?
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, writing. And also at the end of it too, other people reading my writing.
Right.
Just so
Terrifying.
cringe.
Scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, because oh god,
They're like, I'm so sorry for this garbage. I hope you
yeah,
enjoy it.
yeah, that's
Right.
oh, and then they'll know it's me, and then it's like you, I am present in your world, and I don't want to be
Right.
perceived,
Right.
just ugh. But then I chose to do this with you guys. It's all very confusing,
And then kind of allowing people a window into your mind is
Mm.
also a little bit
Right.
scary.
Yeah, like I would have to tell my people, like my beta readers, I would be like, okay, listen, this isn't me.
Right.
I'm okay. It's just the story is very dark, but I'm okay
Right.
because Kairos is very traumatized, can be very traumatizing.
Mm.
That's why I have all the
Mhm.
trigger warnings and everything. Um, it's dark. So I
Right.
would tell people, I'm like, don't look at me differently. That would be like, I feel like I am not my writing. I mean, I am my
Right.
writing, but I'm
Right.
not, like that weird juxtaposition of like where we are, but we aren't. It's just an extension, but is it an extension? Like
Right.
I'm not Devi DiCaprio. I am Anorin. I'm
Mm.
not this. Yeah.
I can relate because so me and my sister co-authored a short story of horror short story compilation,
Oh, nice.
and my therapist bought it, and I was
Oh
like,
no.
don't look at me differently. Like, this is
Yeah.
horror, and this is separate from me. Like, I totally relate, because we do put little pieces of us in every story and every character, and sometimes it's the pieces we don't necessarily love about ourselves, or we can put ourselves in these shoes that are not the nicest people and stuff. But yeah, there is that disconnect where this is not really how I am, though. That you feel like
We
you have
are
to
able to make
caveat,
stuff
yeah.
up that isn't us.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
aside from the nightmares and traumatic paths, I mean, I do have an imagination. I can make stuff
Right.
up.
Right.
My
Right.
gynecologist found out about my book, and she's like, "You wrote this, whatever." She's like, "Okay, I'm gonna buy it." I'm like, "No, you're not. No, you're not. Like, you've been
People I
close
know
to
must
me
not have.
enough.
Yes.
You've seen me enough.
You've seen me at my most vulnerable. Like, do
You
not buy
don't
my
have
book.
to.
Yeah.
You've delved deep inside of me enough. You don't need to delve in deeper. We're
She was
good.
funny.
We're
Yeah.
good." But bless her heart,
Yeah.
I've known her for years. She bought, and it meant so much to me though that
Right.
she supported. It's so sweet. Um, but yeah, that
It's a
exactly.
nightmare, though, when you're like, I know you read this. It can
Because
be very intimidating.
any kind of it doesn't even have to be like dark horror. It can
Right.
be like smut. It can be spicy. It can be like cutesy little those what are they called?
Cozies.
Contemporary, like romance.
Yeah.
Anything, any kind of writing. People have this thought where it's like it's automatically related to you, and yes,
Right.
it is. But like, we can be something other than what we produce.
Right.
Mhm.
Yes, I've created this character in this world, but like, I'm not seeing dead people. I'm not this badass
Right.
fighter. I'm not trying to kill myself every 5 minutes because of my traumatic like you
Right.
know
Right.
I wish I had this man coming for me and like saving me and like all this stuff and like being the love of my life and
Yes.
going to Istanbul for like Istanbul. Ugh, I
Yeah.
love that chapter. Like, it's so like, but that's one of the reasons, like, oh, maybe that's why they got so mad when I did what I did, because I gave them this honeymoon period,
Right. Right.
and then I took it all away. Oh.
I love that we're reflecting on this now and just be like, oh, that's why.
Yeah.
I love that.
Oops. I mean, but I also have lines like in Memoria where he says like, "There's no version of reality where you are not known to me." So,
That's a good one. That's so
so
good.
good.
Yeah.
and then I do what I do to him. So, like, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry if anyone's watching this, you guys, my readers. I love you.
I feel like
Sorry.
so one of my favorite authors is Jane Austen, and I was like,
Yes,
the Mr.
yes.
Darcy character is because he's a good person inside, but he's kind of a jerk, and
Yeah.
he like helps him to see his ways, and he changes. And I was like, unrealistic expectation setup, for my life. I feel like if I read your book, that would be like the second, like, oh my gosh, she made the perfect man, and then he's not real though,
Our favorite books, though, is our book boyfriends. These
Right.
fictional men with
that we just love and adore. And yeah,
Darcy, Captain Wentworth for sure. From
Yes.
Persuasion, that's one of my favorites.
Oh
gosh.
my gosh. Yeah, when he's writing the letter secretly and trying not to look at her.
Stop. Oh my god. I can't.
I
Yeah.
know. These beautiful stories. Yeah, no, I love it. I might have to get your book.
The trigger warnings, though, honestly,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
definitely check the trigger warnings.
Yeah. But it's sweet. There's definitely sweet moments, and I think that's another thing that you can do for any kind of story you're writing if you're wanting to pull on the heartstrings and also just mess with the reader's mind. I know that sounds cruel, but like if you want to mess with the reader and kind of maybe that's not the wording I'm trying to use, but like play with their expectations, right?
Mm-hmm.
You kind of, the way I visualize things is like waves. Like you want to bring the emotions and the climaxes or like inciting incidents right in waves. So like in the beginning, it's a you jump right into it, so it's like a high wave point, and then it just goes down and up and down and up, and however you want to go. So like um, after the big inciting is in the beginning, it goes down. It's a down wave where she's with Karis, and then things happen. So then there's an up wave or tidal wave, as some people have said.
Right,
So
right.
like stuff like that. So you want to,
You
if
gotta
you can
play
look
with
at
the
it that way.
tension, play with the
Yeah, I
emotions.
think
Right.
that's
Gotta
what I'm
break
trying to
tension a
say.
little.
Just in and
Yeah.
out. I love it.
Yeah, in and out.
Thanks.
It kind of just because then they don't really know, and then they can't expect a pattern because it's not up down because
Right, right.
it'll be up, but then it might go down, down, down even more, and then it might go straight up,
Mm,
and then it might not be waves at all. It might end up being an inferno after that. So especially like Chekhov's gun too, right?
right.
Um, I play with that a little differently, like with the witch in the mirror. Um, she comes back in book 2, but she comes back a little differently. So and I do a lot of Easter eggs in my books.
Mhm.
So if you do end up buying it, thank you, Julia. But look out for stuff like that
Mhm.
because something might end up seeming insignificant, but it's not.
Gotcha.
At least in my crazy brain, it's not.
Right. Oh, we love little
I
surprises like
love that. I try to have no wasted lines where everything is gonna come back.
Exactly.
Everything is
Exactly.
important.
Every
Even
sentence has to bring has to move the
that.
story
Right,
forward. Yeah.
yes.
right, right.
All right. So this show is sort of geared towards newer writers and giving advice. What's some writing advice that you found really helpful or that you really like or that you would
Um,
give?
I don't know. So there's a lot of writing advice out there. Some say like, write every day. Others say write a page a day. Others say write a paragraph. Others say, you know, write once a week. Others say, if you don't write 10,000 words, a month, you're not a writer. Like so many different things that I've
Right.
heard. Um, my thing would be write what you want when you can write it, right?
Mhm.
Because we're all working, um, whether we're full time parents at home or whether we're students, whether we're working, at an office job, working remotely. Time is few and far between for a lot of people.
Mhm.
So if you have the chance to write down one sentence of a story, get it out there, because the last thing you want is for it to be stuck in your head and then you forget about it. Let me tell you the things I have forgotten because god
I know,
damn it.
right?
God fucking damn it. The shit I've
Right.
forgotten. I'd say maybe like have a little notebook, like those little like mini pads,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
and just whenever you think of something, just write it down because you don't want to ever be in a position where you forget it.
Mm-hmm.
um, that's just for like everyday stuff. Um, I would say if you are someone who has very little time to write, if you have just enough time, maybe like 5 or 10 minutes, write down an idea or thought, a line of dialogue. That's why I do
Right.
sometimes my TikToks, because even though I don't have like the exposition or anything, if I have like dialogue that I'm like, this has to be here, I get the dialogue out
Mm.
and then it's there, and then with the music too and the imagery that I choose, I know the tone and atmosphere of that dialogue interaction and even the chapter, that I know I can go back. I'm like, okay, this is how this chapter is going to go or how this scene is going to go. I have those kind of played out for me, even though it's just a TikTok. I
Mm-hmm.
kind of have those layers established for myself for later, but not everybody has TikTok. So do what works for you, right? If you have a song, write that down, for motivation.
Right.
Um, if you have a Pinterest board,
Mm-hmm.
Pinterest that shit up, bro. I have
Mhm.
so many. Um, but always make sure you just write something. It doesn't have to be every day. Just anything that inspires you, write it down.
Mm.
And
Capture it
then
while it's still in your brain.
exactly,
Right.
because you don't want to forget. And then the other thing is, don't forget that you are a person and that you matter. Because
Right.
yes, you might be a mom, you might be a dad, you might be a parent, you might be X, Y, and Z, but you're also you, and you don't want to put yourself on the back burner. You deserve to have time for yourself, even if it's in your eyes right now just a hobby. If you want to write something, get those words out for
Mhm.
no one else but you, or if you're doing it for your family, because you deserve it. Okay. Um, it's so important because at the end of the day, the only person that's going to be with you forever is going to be you, right? I
Right.
know it's kind of morbid to think about, but we're our best friends and our worst enemies all in one. I mean,
Mm.
we're in here all the time.
Right.
So you want to make yourself a little happy, and if writing a sentence for a novel that you've always dreamed about writing will make you happy, it'll be worth it in the end. And I'm sorry, I
Mm.
got a little whatever about that, but I think it's so important. Um,
It is. Yeah.
You're
It is
really touching
really.
on so many truths and so many, we're just shaking our heads like, yep, well, that's we know
Yeah.
this.
I always tell people when they talk about self care, it's not just mental self care. It's not just physical self care, taking care of your needs, but you got to nourish your inner world too. And I think that you put that very brilliantly in that little explanation of just like you have to take care of yourself, and sometimes creating and just being creative is taking care of yourself.
Mhm.
And I always hate when people call themselves amateurs or say something's just a hobby, because
yeah,
like amateur comes from the word love. Like it's because you're doing something because you love it, and
yeah,
that's nothing to be ashamed of or embarrassed about or minimize like a
yeah,
lot of us do, is saying,
Well,
"Oh,
downplay your
I'm just
talents,
an
downplay
amateur."
your abilities.
Right, right. Um, I think that absolutely, if you have a story inside you to tell, tell it. And I 100% agree. Any way that you can, if you need speech to text, that's absolutely
Mhm.
totally fine. Yeah.
And it's okay to have your have your story put away, not for
Right.
other people, but you wrote it for you. That is
yeah,
absolutely
yeah.
fine.
You don't have to publish if you don't want to. I'm
Right.
self-publishing. It can be expensive.
Mhm.
Um,
Hmm.
or even if you
It's
go,
time
there
or
are,
money. Hmm.
yeah, it's time and money. I don't have a cover designer at the moment, so I'm trying to do that right now. I've gone through at least 15 different iterations of the third book. I'm still not
Right.
done. But I'm also a Libra, so I'm very indecisive. So I'm just not pleased. Um, that's a whole other show. Um, but yeah, so whatever avenue you want to take it and
Right.
just get it out there. You don't have to publish. You just make yourself happy because
Yeah.
don't leave that in anyone else's hands. It's no
Yeah.
guarantee.
I'm dying over here laughing because my significant other is a Libra, and like, yeah, ask them, what do you want for dinner? I don't know. Like, you can ask any number of questions if it involves a choice. They don't know.
My friend, she's like, "What do you want to eat?" I'm like, "Food." And it's to the point, like, we've been friends almost 30 years now. And
Right.
she asked the question, and before I even answer, she's like, "Food." She's like, "You want food?"
Right. I know what you're gonna say, and I want you
Hey,
to not say it this
you
one
may
time.
be indecisive, but you're consistent.
Yeah. And
Right. Yeah.
yeah. So, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm just
exactly. I'm
yeah.
consistent, at least.
Yeah. So, you kind of have answered some of our other questions. So I want to ask like this last question of you. But what is your favorite book or author, and why?
You're asking a Libra
I
to
know to
choose a
choose.
favorite. Um,
A
honest,
favorite. Doesn't have to
honestly,
be the favorite.
Right.
yeah, I don't have like one favorite author. One I do like a lot is Edgar Allan Poe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so all that we see or seem is but a dream within a dream, right? Um, so I don't know why I haven't had that tattooed on me yet. I mean, I have other quotes tattooed on me. I don't. I should get that one done.
That's a
Um,
good one.
but yeah, he, the whole gothic tortured soul thing.
Hmm.
I just resonates with me. I love it.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was, I think, very much um, turning the ugly into beauty,
Right.
letting us see that something that isn't traditionally beautiful is actually beautiful. A tree without branches, or a tree without leaves, I mean. Something, dressing in black, something that isn't, just the stories, like the creep factor too. Back then, it just wasn't the greatest thing to write about, but he did it anyway. He just fucking did it
Right.
anyway. I
He
love
was
that.
a pioneer in a lot of ways, and he invented the mystery genre with the
Yeah, yeah,
Underground Roost. Yeah.
yeah. So, um, yeah, just thinking about the heart thumping from beneath the floorboards. I'm like, love it.
That is a powerful
Yeah,
story. Yeah.
yeah. But also just like the love. Also, I'm gonna butcher this quote because I haven't memorized it yet. But like, show me every terrible thing you've ever done, and let me love you anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So, yeah, I love him. Yeah.
It's been so great having you on. I've really, really enjoyed this conversation so much. So
Likewise.
thank you for agreeing to do it, even though we're
Thank
putting
you
it
for
on
having
YouTube.
me. Oh God, don't remind me. Oh my God.
No, you've done some really, like I said, just poignant, beautiful things, and I've really loved, enjoyed this talk with you.
Mhm.
Likewise, I've enjoyed everything too. I just have to remember not to watch this.
Right.
Yeah. Oh Lord. But yeah, thank you so much. Hopefully we can get this on a podcast and I can be more comfortable hearing my own voice instead of seeing my own face. If you see my
Right.
TikTok, it's a lot of videos, but not of myself.
Right.
Although I try to expose myself. That didn't come out right. Oh my God.
Well, we
I
talked
think
about
you're
this a little
beautiful, honestly.
with our
It's-
last guest of the struggles
Thank
that
you.
a lot of writers are more introverted or don't like to be in the limelight necessarily, but as
Yeah.
authors we have to put ourselves in the limelight, and
Exactly.
We have to do the
struggle.
TikToks and we
Yeah.
have
Yeah,
to
We
do the
have
author
to
bios and
market. Ugh.
yeah.
have to do the marketing.
Unfortunately, it's part of the
No.
authoring side of things, and
Don't remind me.
I
Ugh.
know,
Yeah.
yeah, we all kind of
Um,
struggle with that. So can hardcore relate. But yeah, if you want to say the magic words, Kirsha.
All right.
I know.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And join us next time when we'll be welcoming our next guest. And remember, there's always more than one way up a mountain. To be on our show, find us on social media at The Tell Not Show or email us at thetellnotshow@gmail.com.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you so much, Anorin.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thanks again for listening. If you enjoyed the show, consider subscribing and liking. We appreciate all the support. Julia J.K. Allen is an author, editor, and coach and can be found at hijingsrudder.com.
Kirsha Fox is an author, avid reader, gamer, and mother to four, and you can find her at kirshafox.com. Thanks and see you next time.